welcome to Life Lessons Unscripted. Today, I have a special guest. It is author, singer-songwriter, cantorial soloist, and writing coach, Miss Susan L. Lipson. Miss Lipson has published multiple books, including Knock on Wood, also known as A Secret in the Wood on the ebook version. It's a contemporary fantasy novel for middle grade readers, and she has also written multiple textbooks and other poems. In addition to that, she's also had her first album, Songs for Divine Conversations, featuring 12 songs for spiritual uplifting, all on all streaming platforms. So go listen.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here on your podcast. And I am all about life lessons. I find life lessons in virtually everything that I write, everything that I coach. So I feel I'm in good hands here.
Yeah, that's great, great. So let's get started with like your early life with writing, because I mean, obviously you're an amazing writer now, but how did you get into writing and what motivated you to like make it your career?
Good question. I think the first time I actually thought I want to be an author someday was in second grade, believe it or not, long time ago, when a teacher said, you could be an author someday. I have a feeling you could be an author someday. And I really, in fact, in my first book, knock on wood, there's a teacher that appears in the book, and she's a nod to that very teacher. Because Sarah, the character in the book, also always wanted to write. Um, and I think from that point on, I always wrote poetry and I always wrote songs, but I never took myself seriously as a songwriter because I didn't have any technical musical training. I mean, I had piano lessons, but I was never very good at piano.
Same here, same here.
The kick marks on the bass of my piano could tell you about how much joy I got out of my piano lessons as a kid. But ironically, today I actually sit down at the piano quite often and start plucking out my songs because I just want to get the basic notes down, which I'll then send to a transcriptionist. But this has been since I was a kid, and I would write down lyrics just as I would poems, and then keep them in little files that said to be published someday. That, that's how I know I wanted to be an author. They all had these little, and I still have some of those old scrapbooks.
Aw, that's adorable. Yeah, I could say right now, like my mom, when I was younger, she'd be like, "Hey, you're gonna be grateful one day that I forced you to do music theory and this thing and that thing." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna use this." And now I'm like, "Thanks,
Now
mom."
you're writing songs too. You'll be so happy because I feel that I'm teaching myself in a weird way some of the music theory just based on when my transcriptionist sends something. And then I'll say to her, no, I'm hearing the rhythm a little bit differently. And she'll say, oh, well, then you wanted a quarter note here and you wanted that. And I'm starting to get some of the technicalities. And I'm starting to understand the technicalities. I can't put them down in words and I don't know all the verbiage for it, but I'm starting to, at least I get the concepts now.
Right. That's actually so cool though that you've always known that you would be like a writer, songwriter, author, since you were really young. Even though you like at that point were like, maybe, and you didn't take yourself seriously, but I'm so glad you did take yourself seriously because then you published Knock on Wood. What was, I don't know, writing that book like?
There it is. So knock on wood. Well, knock on wood, I actually wrote when I was a young mom and we were about to move. And the book is about a little girl who's moving out of her home. But I realized while I was writing it that it was really about me moving in many ways because I moved out of my childhood, my beloved childhood home when I was in sixth grade. And this was, I loved my elementary school. In fact, talking about writing, I'm just remembering now, I wrote a little fake newspaper that we did on what we call mimeograph machines, where they were the precursor to actual photocopies. And we would go in, some nice teacher let us go into the office. We had typed it at home on a typewriter on these sheets with purple ink, sort of like carbon paper. You put them through these machines, the smell is vile, and it prints out copy after copy, but and they're wet when they come out. So you actually had to dry them and
Oh,
then staple the pages together. And we made little booklets that someone in the office let us make a whole bunch of them, and we got to sell them on the playground for like 5 cents or something. It was just that was really my first publishing thing, and that was a book that I wrote with my two best friend boyfriends at the time, and we wrote it was about the humphanta juice, which was an elephant slash camel that kept juice in its hump. I still remember little bits of it, and I'm still in touch with one of those guys all these years later.
yeah. Wait, so like, wait, it's like a juice, like you can like stick like a dispenser through it, like.
I don't I think we thought that the trunk would be like a hose and that
Oh,
you would ask the humphanta juice creature to fill your cup and then you would I don't even remember the whole story, but it was just I believe it probably came on the heels of us reading Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories, which were
ooh,
about how the elephant got, how the I think there was how the elephant got its hump or something. But that's how early I was already thinking of my words being something that I wanted to disseminate.
wow.
So we were passing them out on the playground. I mean, it was funny.
I would have loved to be alive back then and gotten one of those and just been reading it. I would eat that up.
It's funny. I think that's probably, and I was still in touch with Mrs. Bloomer, my second grade teacher at that point, and I mean, she just said she bought one. I think I remember her buying one actually, and she always knew that that was going to be something that I would do. But went back to knock on wood. So when I moved out of that school that had given me all this creative opportunity, um, and my kids were moving, I was combining those feelings of being the displacement and the unwillingness to let go and the need to move on. And so the book is about moving on literally in life, not literally and figuratively in life. That's really the underlying theme of the book. And I realized that many of the things that I've written, poems, songs, are in a way messages to me that are also universal messages that other people can relate to. Because I've had many kids say, "Oh, I really love that book. I felt so bad for Sarah, but I'm so glad that she was able to make a friend in the process of moving." And kids related to it that way. So,
It's beautiful, yeah. I don't know, I think it's really nice whenever you get to find that empathy link with somebody in a book, and
right.
it's like you become best friends with your characters.
Well, I think that that's one of the things that I do when I teach writing too. I try to and I try to tell people that if you can make your readers feel what the characters are feeling, which is in essence what you have felt in some aspect of your life, you make a connection based on emotional reality, even if it's in fiction. So the emotional realism is what I find most important, even if it's in a fantasy novel. You can never forget that aspect if you really want to create something that's memorable.
Right, right. I mean, it's always the people who end up taking you through. Yeah.
Right. And
So, oh, sorry, continue. What were you going to
Oh,
say?
I would say, and the honesty of the characters also. They have to be, they have to be real. I was just thinking, because you brought up knock on wood, how Sarah has to admit that she was a little selfish at first. She just didn't want to leave her room because she found a tree fairy in her bedroom, and she's, thinking to herself, darn, finally something magical happens to me in my life, and now I have to move. So at first you realize that it's all about her, but then she realizes that this poor tree fairy is trapped in the wood panel of her bedroom wall, and she has maybe she has the ability to release her from that wall. So she makes that her mission. So in turning her needs, suppressing her needs in favor of helping this newfound fairy friend, she grows, and that's part of the moving on. So
Right, right. I mean, character growth is so important. I
yeah,
remember one of the first, because I've worked with you for much of my writing life, basically all of my writing life. So you've known my various characters pretty well. But my original idea for Legora, I had one of the characters had so much, and you were like, is he realistic? And I was like, well, I had to change it, but.
well,
Yeah.
the more you thought of him as based on an amalgamation of people you've known. The more
Right.
you started to kind of pick, and I don't know who these people were, they will remain unknown. But it makes them more real. And some of the things I remember you would say, well, that's how I would react. And I thought, good, because you need something real in there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting skill. I'm pretty sure I picked up from you, taking people and different circumstances from an author's life and just inserting it or infusing it into a book because,
Right. Infusing it is a great word to use because you don't want it so obviously to be semi-autobiographical because then everybody starts picking everything apart. I mean, I think about Taylor Swift as a songwriter. I thought something I found so interesting when I watched the documentary about her was everyone assumes that all the songs are about her, but they're not. She's often writing these little short story songs and but she's using emotions and creating these characters. And I really admire that. I think it's an amazing thing because everyone's assuming they're about her. I mean, she got probably as much hate and love mail from people based on things that people assumed were about her. So I
right.
think, yeah. I
Like
mean,
the, oh, sorry, you go.
like in Legara, right? People are going to assume one character is you, but really, I remember in your story, you are a part of each of those characters in a different way.
I am, yeah. And in some ways, it's really nice to see that. I mean, you, in some sense, were part of Sarah or part of your other characters in your other books and poems and stories.
Right. Well, whenever I did talks at schools when the book first came out, kids would always say, "Who are you, Mrs. Lipson? Are you Sarah or Althea?" And I'd say, "Who do you think I am?" After reading it, and then I'd have like everybody saying it simultaneously, "Sarah, Althea," at the same time. But the fact is, I'm a little of both.
Yeah. I mean, that's sometimes how it is. And also
Right.
going back to what you said about Taylor Swift, like, have you listened to her song, Getaway Car? Like,
Probably, and I probably don't know the title. I don't know all the.
in a getaway car, I left you at the motel bar. It's like,
Oh yeah. Yes.
there's no way that she actually did that because it's like
Right.
we took the money in the bag and we stole the keys, and then that
Right.
was the last. I'm like, and how could people assume that she literally stole some guy's keys in a car and ran away? Like,
Right.
I think that's not, yeah.
Exactly. And there are a lot of songwriters who write even about other people's experiences. I remember I wrote my son's a songwriter, and many of the songs, he'll laugh at me sometimes because I'll assume that I've interpreted them correctly, and he'll say, "Whatever you think, Mom, whatever you think." He likes to be cryptic about these things, but I found that one of Ian's songs ended up inspiring a song that I wrote that really was not about me, but it was sort of related to his song. I haven't published it or anything, but it's I think it's on my SoundCloud. I have a SoundCloud with a whole bunch of a cappella songs that have not yet been produced professionally, but it's like my works in progress place.
Yeah, yeah.
You get
Okay.
inspired by others.
Yeah, it's true. Um, Actually, back to knock on wood,
Mhm.
because I'd actually like to know more about how it was like publishing that book. Because I mean, as I don't know, most authors probably know, getting your book published is a kind of a grueling process, kind of in the same way that like any kind of entertainment or acting or performing gig kind of has that same like you send, reject, send, and accept, like that kind of dynamic. How did it feel being a young author publishing her first book that was like basically 25 years ago?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting story because I first wrote it as a picture book. I don't know if you ever knew that. It was a picture book, and it was called The Lady in the Wall. And I sent it to an agent who was representing me at the time, and he said that he felt that the book was more of a middle grade voice than a picture book voice, and he wanted me to expand it. And he was very astute, and I thought, and it turned. Then Jonathan came into the story. It was before just really, basically Sarah Althea and Sarah's mother, and then the whole story evolved, and I ended up with this whole chapter about them using this green energy theory to release her from the wall using crickets and pine needles and all these, things that I came up with. And it was very middle grade. And he was representing me. And then it was sad because he left the agent that he was with. And I we sort of just parted ways, let's put it that way. And I started looking for a new agent, and this was the year before Harry Potter. So this is important to think of. I sent it to one of the top literary agents who I still have the letter in my file, and it just like, oh, kills me every day. I read it, not every day, but I read this letter, and she said, I really love the writing. I love the concept of the story, but fantasy is just not going well right now. It's not the genre.
Oh my God.
So, and this was contemporary fantasy. It's a contemporary fantasy being different that it's not a world building. It's in a contemporary world that something fantastic happens, as opposed to straight high fantasy, which is in its own, like yours, like Legora, which is in its own world, that resembles, real world, but is its own world. Um, so she said it wouldn't, and so I shelved it for a while. And then I said, I just want to do this my way. I had this idea for the pictures. I had these pictures in the book that are like, I'll show you they have like these hidden photos that I don't know if you can see it in here, probably there a little bit. They have these hidden photos, but in the back of the book, they're viewable. This is obviously 25 years ago, but they're viewable with these little red glasses that come in the back of the book. And you put the glasses on, and the image comes out. You can see what's hidden behind the image. So the reason I wanted that was because it was metaphorical. It was, if you look closely at anything, there's always something hidden, some hidden lesson, right? And that's what, it went with the theme of the book. And it was fun. And it also got me into bookstores where I did these little magic site book signings. So what I ended up doing is I lost faith in doing it the regular route for publishing, and I decided to self-publish. That's how it ended up, using my idea with the glasses, and I wanted it to be what I wanted. I wanted it to look cool. I liked the cover, and I hired a printer, a publisher, and I hired an artist. She came up with the design. Some friends of mine who are in the publishing world were really helpful, backed me quite a bit. And then the book took off. Uh, um, it was placed on the recommended school literature list for Poway Unified for a few years, and I know it was being taught in classrooms because I get called to the classrooms. And some of the best parts about that were when I would get invited as an author. And I remember going into this one elementary school, and I came in, and the teacher saw me at the door, and she went like this. And then I heard her, she was finishing up reading a chapter, and she had been reading my book day after day prior to me coming in for the actual writing workshop, which is what I was there to teach. So that was really cool, knowing that other teachers were using the book and using the book as prompts as well for lessons. That always makes me happy.
Yeah, I bet. I
I
mean,
need to use Legora. I need to use some passages. Can I use some passages from Legora?
yes, you can. You can.
Got it. It's recorded.
Okay.
I
Um,
do that often. I use students' writings. Like for certain poems, I'll think, oh, so and so wrote a poem about this. This is a good example to inspire the kids. So I will get permission from a student sometimes and use their work. So
yeah, I mean that's actually an excellent strategy considering like so many people have so many things to like bring to a writing table.
yeah, and be inspired by someone like Lisa Pan, who at age 11 wrote a fantastic poem, and I would like to share it. And you too could write a fantastic poem like this. It's mentorship happens in indirect ways sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
People you
Um,
don't know.
I think that that idea, going back to your feelings while publishing Knock on Wood, first of all, it completely enrages me that they were like, fantasy's not going anywhere. And then you see Harry Potter come out like,
Right. Oh, I'm telling you, my heart, I was just, when I saw Harry Potter, and then every book after that came out was fantasy. But there was a dry spell in fantasy just prior to Harry Potter. I mean, J.K. Rowling's book opened the door for all those fantasy authors to
I
come
know.
out. It's kind of like a side genre. Now you go into Barnes and Noble, for instance, and half the books for the middle grade readers.
Fantasy.
And yeah, exactly.
I mean, some of the first
Anything.
books I read that got me back into writing were
I
fantasy.
remember. I remember.
Percy Jackson. Shout out to Rick Riordan.
Yeah. And the thing about Percy Jackson that I need I need to read just based on your recommendation. I've read like passages of it, but I need to sit down and read some because I admire a writer who also opens the door to other forms of literature. You got fascinated by mythology because of Percy Jackson, I think.
I did. And I use it in my stories, like
Mhm.
all the kinds of elements.
Exactly. And so anyone who likes Percy Jackson would love your books, I'm sure. So,
Thanks, Miss Lipson. I think I'm just learning so much from you through your publishing journey because I think it's so in character that you decided to go, no, 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 no. I want it my way. We're gonna do it my way, and just went for it. Like, I think that is so admirable. Seriously.
I was just impatient too. Honestly, it was, and my friends really supported me doing it because the friend of mine, he's a best-selling author in the business book world, and he said, Susan, this is, you got to believe in yourself, you got to do it. And frankly, the publication of this book was more than the book. It opened the door for me as a writing teacher. Because of this book, I became Mrs. Lipson, the writing teacher as well, because every time I would go talk to a group, I would throw in things that had to do with the writing. And so I remember the first time a teacher came up to me afterward and said, I love the way you make a lesson out of your author talk and really were teaching kids about writing. Would you come and do a series of workshops for us? And that's how it all started. I started doing a series of workshops. I had already been teaching. I started teaching in 1997. Technically. So that was before the publication of the book. But the book really launched me and got me. I had students from all different parts of the county at that point, and they were coming to my home. Now it's all online. But now I've got students, I got two students from the Bay Area. I have a student from Texas. It's nice to be online. So you do have more kids, available. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on that topic of like, I don't know, teaching, have you always known that you were going to be a coach and in some like and I don't mean like when you were like 2 years old, like I'm gonna be a teacher one day. Like I just mean like as you've I don't know, have you always had a sense that you were in some ways meant to be some sort of mentor or coach for some people?
absolutely. I mean, in sixth grade? Yeah, sixth grade, I had a summer camp with my friend. And I mean, I can't imagine what parents hired two 12-year-old girls to go around. We collected neighborhood kids and we had about 13, 14 kids, as I recall. We collected them from their houses. We walked everyone holding hands back to my house, and we had a large yard. And I had a 3-hour day camp. I think it was a 2-week camp. And that was my first foray into teaching. And everything was about creativity. It was about making arts and noodle necklaces and dictating little stories, right? And having the kids illustrate them, and everything was about creativity. So I always knew that I loved it. And then for years as a teacher, um, I was writing my own lessons. I had always created my own curriculum. And then I don't recall who suggested, but someone suggested to me, you need to create a book so other teachers can use your lessons. So I had submitted a book it was called Prompted by Poetry. That was the title. It was accepted for publication by Scholastic Reference.
Wow.
And then I went to do this was so sad. I had you get what's called an advance. So they give you an advance. It's like betting on how well your book is going to do. And the book was going to be in all the Scholastic book fairs. And I was jazzed. And I called all the teachers who had me at their classes and told them I have a book coming out. It's going to be in the book fairs. And everyone was saying, yeah, we'll support you. It's great, blah, 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 blah. Um, and then I went to New York to deliver my manuscript, only to find out that Scholastic had just folded its reference division, and my editor had been fired. And they handed me off to the one remaining person who was responsible for the remainder of books on contract. They canceled my contract because they weren't going to do new books.
No!
And I made a trip to New York, manuscript in hand, all excited, only to find out. And I knew that my book, she says, there's a chance we might keep your book on, but we have to see. But she says, but I've got to be honest with you. I'm not much into poetry. I knew, like,
Okay.
of course she's going to cancel my book. So it was devastating for me, to be honest, as a writer and as a teacher. Oh my gosh. I then took the book out and sent it to other publishers. I sent it to Proof Rock Press, which publishes books for gifted education, and they immediately snapped it up. I was very happy. Here's the book. It is
Ah,
called Writing.
Writing Success Through Poetry. I have that book.
Yes, wherever it is. There it is. Okay, yes. Still available on Amazon. So anyway, and it was like a consolation prize for me. It not everyone knew about proofreq, and also I didn't want my books and my lessons to only be for gifted kids. Granted, I have had a lot of gifted students over the years. I'm looking at one.
Okay.
So but I've also had remedial kids who, to me, one of my greatest emotional triumphs in my career is when I take a kid who really didn't like writing, who didn't believe in themselves, and they actually are proud of something that they've written, or they're reluctant because their parents are pushing, 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 and then they didn't really want lessons, and only for them to then show me how much they love writing. That is wonderful for me. So I was not happy with that publication because even though it was out there, it was only out there for teachers of the gifted. And I wanted it to be more equitable. All of my lessons can be done by a variety of levels. And I mean, you actually were mostly private lessons, and then you had a group that you were in studying novels, serious writers who were really wanting to commit to writing a novel, which every once in a while I get blessed to have. So that's always a great thing. I have another group that I think is going to be coming up in the next year. Um, but the fact is, I create lessons that will speak to the uppermost, but I like teaching to the top and letting whatever trickle down rather than teaching to a middle or below level and having it be easy for everyone and not challenging. As
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you gifted writer that you are, many times I'd fill your documents with comments, and you would be like, oh my gosh, all this stuff. But then I knew you were a real writer because you would say, okay, all right, no, I get that. You looked at it with a critical eye, and you incorporated revisions based on what you thought would work. I have a little girl right now who reminds me of you when you were little, because her first response is, but I don't want to change it. And then she thinks about it and then she says, okay, I see what you mean. And then she does it. I know she's going to be a writer.
That's amazing how you can just, I don't know, how you can just tell. Um, Actually, on this idea of creativity, I'd love to start talking about you as a singer-songwriter because I mean, I've always known you were an author, of course. And I mean, now you've just told me that you've always kind of been this like multi-talented triple threat kind of girl, but like I mean like
No
how
dancing in there. That's not a thing.
not for me either. I mean, I admire so many dancers because wow, their body control is insane. I want to know more about your Songs for Divine Conversations.
So that has been the oldest song that I ever wrote that was actually transcribed and publicly performed, so to speak, because I don't like the word performed if I can avoid it, because a lot of these songs are really sacred songs to me, and so I feel that they're song slash prayers. Some of them are not. Some of them are all in English, and some of them are half in Hebrew as prayers. But this is the it's the oldest song that I wrote was actually inserted into another song, and that was the song I wrote when I walked down the aisle and got married. So
Oh,
yeah, it was a very simple song of gratitude, and I was doing another song that had a similar theme that I've written recently, and I needed a bridge, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, my first song ever would fit there and work as a bridge. So I put it in, and it felt very full circle moment. Um, but that I wrote that song back in probably 1981 in anticipation of my 1982 wedding. So now you know how long I've been married. And the joy I got the first time hearing a song that was not just playing in my head like they had been as a child, but hearing a flutist and a pianist playing it while I was waiting behind the doors for the doors to open and come out as the bride walking down. It was double exhilaration. I was going to meet my husband at the end of the aisle, and I was listening to my own music at the same time. That was, I'll never forget that exhilaration. And
Amazing.
yeah, and that's what really made me feel like, oh my gosh, maybe sometime, maybe I'll be able to do this. But flash forward many decades later, after I had been regularly sharing my compositions with in my synagogue world and in the interfaith community, which I was also actively a part of, I would perform songs. I would sing them to a musician who actually knew how to work it out on guitar or play it on piano, and then it became either my solo or many of my pieces became choir pieces. And in fact, I wrote the song that dedicated the North County Holocaust Memorial, and it was performed by two synagogues together. And what a joy to hear I was singing the lead, and they were all echoing, these two congregations echoing my song together. It was very, very joyful for me. But when I turned 60, my husband said to me, I would really like to get you something amazing for your birthday. Do you have anything in mind? And I said, would you produce an album for me? That would be a bucket list item. And so at age 60, I'm happy to say, I'm proud to say that I started a whole new thing. And now I take myself seriously as a professional because I went into a recording studio, very bona fide recording studio with really excellent musicians playing the parts. I mean, people who've been playing with Michael Jackson in the past. People have been playing. I mean, the people that he brought in on my song, there was one person who was touring with Lady Gaga, and then he got him between tours and came over. It's like I was thinking, why are they playing my songs? This is crazy. But it was COVID time, and they were all out of work. They would love and have studio work. And it just so happened that I got two religious Christian one was a drummer and one was the guitarist, not the guitarist, the drummer and the bassist. And they came in on the songs because they said they connected with my songs,
Oh, that's so sweet.
grounded in Jewish values. And so it's like that to me said a lot too. That made that a very special experience for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and then I did a concert which you came to, as I recall.
What do you?
Um, and yeah, and launched the album, and and it's out there, and I know certain synagogues where they do my songs here and there, and I'm just hope it'll keep growing and growing. But I've been writing a lot of songs that are not Jewish songs, but they're kind of desolate, keeping with the times. So they're you know ballady kinds of songs, and um, yeah, so I'm writing a lot lately too.
What do you hope listeners will take away from your music?
I hope that they will, regardless of their religious affiliation or spirituality, I hope they'll take away the fact that we can have a conversation with the divine, whatever you consider the divine to be, even if that's the universe, and how you connect to it. But my goal in creating the songs is to foster the idea of oneness, that we're all connected. We're all connected with everyone around. In fact, one of the songs in here, um, the song "Closer to You," and it's a duet I did with the producer actually who created the songs, Sam Glazer. And the song was one that I wrote during 2020, and it's all in English. And it's it was a song of deep frustration. Believe it or not, I wrote it in the shower, and
Wow.
I was singing, like singing this frustration out to the world that, what do you think when we don't trust each other? How do you feel when we cause each other pain? These were like the words that I was like calling out to God or whatever, again, whatever you consider the universe. And by the end of this way too long shower, because there was nothing else to do during COVID, I came out and I sat down in my towel and wrote out the words. And I mean, I tweaked them a little bit after that, but I had words and music came to my head simultaneously. And the idea behind it was that, we need some intervention here. It was a song of, frustration, and I'm sure that most people could relate to this, that, we're at a point, especially in today's world where everything is so divisive. We want something greater than all of us to intervene and fix it somehow or help us fix it. So it's a song about being closer to you, capital Y. And that kind of is the epitome of what I want from this whole album. That was the third song on the album. So
Right, for connection. I think that's so
right.
beautiful. When I was at your concert, I'm going to call it a concert because it was gorgeous. I
Um,
know people were standing up and they were like throwing their arms around. You had people dance. Like, I think that really speaks to your idea of human connection because people at that performance were just so into it. They were so connected with you and with each other.
Thank you. That's what I do whenever I do any of my songs, because my songs, a number of those songs that you heard have become actually part of the regular liturgy during our services. So even when I'm not there, which I love that our designated professional cantor sings my songs. Um, and in fact, like this coming weekend, I'm being honored at the synagogue as one of some volunteers that do a lot for the synagogue. And um, one of the musicians who's going to be performing on the bima asked me if there's any special requests I have, and she knows my songs, so I asked for one of my songs, my Hallelujah song, which is all English except for the word Hallelujah. And it's a song that is that's another song that really epitomizes this. And the words are, I pray, dear God, please show me where I should go. I ask you, God, to tell me what I should know. I wonder if you'll show me some kind of sign. Then I realize you're doing so all of the time.
Wow.
And that's the opening verse. And then it just goes into hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. And that's, basically where I sing it too low, but I'm speaking, I'm not really singing right now. So, yeah. So that's kind of the epitome of what that album's all about, that connect.
That's a really great way to put it because I love your music. Yes.
Mhm.
What has music like brought to your life? That's a huge question, but like for example, I know for me, like writing music has brought me kind of it's brought me peace through like catharsis, this idea of catharsis, like letting it all out and just letting the piano express it. Like what has it brought you?
Definitely the same as you, catharsis for sure. The the opportunity to connect with other people through my music has been that's just indescribable. When I recently was doing a song from my album called Nizkor Be'ahava, We Remember with Love. And it's a song that we sing during memorial services. And one of the congregants, who is someone I've known for a long time, our kids were in high school together, and her son died. And it was tragic. I mean, he was in his 30s, and it was just horrible. It was very recent, a year ago, actually. And then they had a service in his honor, memorial service. And so I was asked to sing my song because it's remember them out of honor, remember them for the joy they brought our lives, remember them for how they made us better, remember them with love. And then there's a chorus, but that's the gist of the song. It's about not being lost in our grief, but pulling ourselves out of grief with memories that are beautiful. And I was singing it, and I looked down from, I'm up on this elevated stage that they call the Bema, and I'm looking down, and my this friend and her husband were holding each other and just sobbing. And they had not cried in public up until that point. Everybody kept saying, wow, they're so strong. They're so strong. It was just, it was remarkable. And I felt like I felt, oh my gosh, do I feel bad? What do I feel? There's some and afterward she came up to me and she said, I needed that so much. You just like allowed me to just release it. And then I felt like the power of what, and it's happened in a couple of other times where I've seen people crying when I've been singing this, and and they always thank me. So that makes me feel this incredible power to connect with people through songs. Even I have another song called To Pray to You that whenever I sing it, I look out and there's always someone wiping, and that's not a sad song. That's a song about opening us up to prayer, but it's just something being able to evoke those emotions and having people come up to me and and they're wiping their eyes. Oh my gosh, it's so meaningful. I love that. That's what it's all about to me.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
hope I hope you have that someday. I hope you have that thing where you're singing a song and someone comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, you were singing my song." Like there's an old song you need to look up. Um, it's called "You're So Vain."
Oh, you're so vain.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, I bet you think, yeah, by Carly Simon, because that song, she says, I bet you think this song is about you, don't you, don't you? And you think about all the women who've met someone who is so vain and made them feel lousy. And
Yes.
like, it's the kind of thing that any woman who hears it's going to say, oh, we can totally relate to that, and you just want to say, can I be your friend? That's what I wish for you. I wish
Oh,
for you. I mean, I even had a feeling like that when I did Knock on Wood. I was doing a book talk once, and a really bizarre thing. A woman, I think I might have told you this story once, that a woman, not a kid, came up to me and said, oh my gosh, I read your book. And she's crying. And she says, I read your book, and my name is Sarah. And when I was 10, I had to move. And believe it or not, we had wood paneling in my room. And I used to look at all the shapes in the wood paneling and imagine, different things in the wood. And oh my gosh, and my father died when I was 10, just like Sarah. And I just have to buy your book. I was like, wow. I was so taken aback. You expect little kids, but this is a woman who came up and was standing there listening to me reading the first chapter. That was one of those connection moments. And I think that really does sum up the reason I do what I do. It's for in everything, in my poems. I mean, I have a poetry book that I also self-published during the pandemic, Disillusions of Grandeur and other eye openers. And those poems are all about these ironic moments in life, but they all connect to a bigger picture. I mean, as my student that I was always trying to get I'm always trying to get kids to um, look at life in a much broader perspective than they usually do.
yeah. You're an amazing, amazing, amazing coach, and also just an amazing, admirable author and singer-songwriter. I am in awe of all you do.
I'm in awe of all you do.
Okay.
You still
I
have no.
always like to close off this podcast with a little game.
Okay.
So we're going to play a quick round of this or that.
Okay.
Let's start with your background. If you were to live in the wilderness, would you rather live in a tree or live in a cave?
Tree.
I would rather.
Like Althea the tree fairy. Live in
Oh,
a tree.
yes. I feel like I'd fall though. Like seriously, I feel like I'd like fall and like break my neck.
Well, I was thinking of one of those trees that get hollowed out. There's one in Balboa Park that has a cave in the base. There's a
I'm just like,
there's a great tree in Balboa Park. There's a cactus garden, and there's this tree. I think it's called a bottle. It's not a bottle brush, but it's some kind of bottle thing. And it got all hollowed out over time, and there's a cave in it. And that's where I always said I would like to live in that tree. It's like a cave. It's like a combo tree cave
okay, so you found a loophole, both of them.
on the loophole. Exactly.
I didn't even know that existed. I was thinking like Katniss Everdeen.
Go to Balboa Park, go to the cactus thing, and you'll see it. You'll just keep going to the left, away from the roses, and you'll see it.
Keep it in mind. Would you, if you had a superpower, would you be able to read minds or be able to travel through time?
Mm, depends. If I was to travel through time, would I have the ability to change things?
Ooh,
Or would that set into motion all kinds of problems?
up to
Um,
interpretation.
and to read minds, I think I would rather travel through time as long as I could come back and use the knowledge gained, even if I couldn't change anything, to use the knowledge gained from actually living in that experience to change the world in some way in the present. That's what I would pick. Reading minds in today's world, I don't know that I want to know what a lot of people,
Yeah, that's really valid, actually.
or if they even think. Sometimes that's the problem. So,
Yeah, true. I feel like I'd only want to know like certain thoughts, but not everything. Yeah,
right, right,
awkward. Are you
right.
a night owl or an early bird?
Nowadays, I'm an early bird. I used to be for most of my adult life, I was a night owl. In fact, writing the poetry book, writing the all the writing, I was up 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, just writing after everybody. That was my magic time when I felt really inspired. And there are certain days where I'll get inspired and I'm staying up late. Sometimes I have an 8 o'clock student on Wednesday nights, and after I get offline with this kid, he's a great writer. Um, Love to introduce you to him. He's a little younger than you, but he would have been a good pair for you to work with. He's really a terrific writer, and I get really inspired sometimes. And Wednesday nights, I end up staying up really late a lot of times. I just don't leave my computer. I end my Zoom and I just start writing things based on sometimes the prompts I gave him, and then I'm writing.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I didn't bring up though, is that the teaching, all of my things feed each other.
Mm. Well, I
Everything.
think that comes across, I mean, in your big vision of communication. Yeah. Oh, communication, connection. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, knock on wood, I started a musical based on knock on wood. I never
What?
I did. I have 3 songs and I've never finished it. That's what you and I should collaborate on
You and I
someday.
should
Right?
collab.
It was a school play. And I think it would be great actually I think it would be such a cute thing for schools to do.
Yeah.
I I can envision it because it's a great lesson for,
Oh, I can imagine the set. Oh my God. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Are you a coffee or a tea person?
Coffee.
Yes, I know you. Mwah, I love coffee. Wait, on a different note, hot coffee or iced coffee?
Always hot, even on the hottest day.
Iced coffee. Okay, okay,
And
okay.
my daughter, you and my youngest daughter always likes her cold
No
coffee.
matter how cold it is outside, I always need it iced. I can never have it hot.
That's funny.
Yeah. Spontaneous road trip or planned vacation?
Hmm. I like both, to be honest. Um, I like to plan a vacation, but then see where we can find spontaneous moments. How's that?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I feel like I'd get scared that I would like run out of gas if I was on a spontaneous road trip. I feel
Oh,
like,
well, that's true. So that's the part that I want planned. But
yeah,
I like to take the detours.
right.
Sometimes the detours have more to offer than anything else.
Interesting. That's true. It's very true.
We found a random museum on a road once because we were in an electric vehicle and we were charging at this weird place in the middle of nowhere that happened to be attached to a museum of like California Western history. We never would have visited it, but it was really fun. We laughed our way through the whole museum while the car was charging. And
Yeah, for me, I think one of the best, okay, I had the best olives of my entire life in France.
oh,
And
wow.
I was walking, I remember we were like in like the middle of a street and we were like, "Oh, I'm so hungry." My dad's like, "Oh my God, I'm finding a restaurant. My God." And then he like walks and we just stumble into this little restaurant and it was like a family owned and I devoured those olives. Mwah, they were so
So
good.
remember the name of the restaurant?
No. But I
That's
remember
the
what
problem. That's the only problem with not having it on the planning thing. You have to make sure you record it so you can
exactly.
recreate it.
It was in French too, so I have no I don't even know how to read French. I'm just like, huh, it's good. And then I leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, had that moment. And it'll never be perfect because I found that when you go back and sometimes try to recreate something, it's never as good as the first time. I don't think you kind of embellish it in your mind about how great it was.
Yeah.
So better to keep that, I think.
Better to keep it in the memories. Are you a rainy day or a sunny day kind of girl?
Uh, I like both for different reasons. I
Hmm.
like a rainy day makes me want to cancel everything that I'm obligated to do and just write. That's what I like about a rainy day, as long as my computer is working or I've just write by hand. Um, but a sunny day, I just want to get out and walk. I love being in nature, walking in nature. That's why like everything I write has to do with nature too. Lots of things.
Yeah. I feel like you and Henry David Thoreau would get along really well.
Yes, and I love Thoreau's poetry. Yes,
Hmm.
definitely.
Small town or big city?
Small town.
Big city for me.
I know you're a big city for sure. Yep.
NYC. I love NYC.
Yeah. I love going there, but I lived there for a year.
Oh, really?
You didn't know that, huh?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I lived there for a year. That's when I was a literary agent when I lived there. In fact, you know what's funny? I have books. You can't find them right now, but I have books that I was part of that have me in the acknowledgement saying thank you for making this book something I could point to with pride, and thank you to Susan Lipson for seeing what this book could be
Oh,
and things like that. And that was really my back door into the world of publishing.
wow.
Yeah, because I was helping other people. I was editing their books and helping them get published, negotiating their
Awesome.
deals and all that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Awesome. Would you rather write about your dreams or your nightmares?
dreams.
Nightmares.
Yeah. Well, I paused because sometimes the nightmares teach you something that you're afraid of and make you
Yeah.
confront the thing. But I've only written actually once about a dream. It was published actually. It's in a Chicken Soup for the Soul book.
Hmm.
I think I gave you that story, didn't I?
Maybe. I remember you giving me Knock on Wood and your textbook, but I don't.
Okay. Well, this is a story that if I haven't given to you, I've got to send it to you. It's it's actually on my website. I actually have it because it was read on a podcast out loud in addition to being published in the Chicken Soup book. And it's the story called Connections, which goes with everything else I've been saying.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's a really cool, true story about it wasn't really a dream. It was like a spiritual connection with someone who was in a coma who lived in New York. My old boss, the literary agent I worked for in New York, she
Wow.
was she was dying, and I woke up in the middle of the night with a message from her, like, and I didn't know anything. And she died just a few days later. It's a crazy story. You gotta go listen to it on my website.
Okay.
Susan L. Lipson, wordsandmusic.com. And it's on my website under my works. And if you listen to the person who read it was this woman named Dr. Amy Robbins, who has a podcast about otherworldly things. And I had sent it to her and she said, oh, could I read this in my podcast? So she read the whole thing. So
That's awesome.
or you
Yeah.
can buy the Chicken Soup book. So yeah.
I feel like my nightmares are so like action packed. Like I feel like it usually involves like sword fights or like punching or like random just like creepy pasta kind of things. Like I
Pasta.
is it like creepy pasta like that like those like short little stories like there's like supernatural things like there's this one that's like this monster walks by my door every day at 3 a.m. We're not allowed to look outside and then like someone it's like these random little things like I feel
Yeah.
like my nightmares are full of that so like
Well,
it kind
maybe they probably come into your books.
Yeah,
Like
they do, they
all
do,
the battles of Legora that I remember, they're probably some
they do.
they felt like they felt very cinematic. Like I felt as if you had seen them somewhere, but I they could have been in your dream world as well.
Yeah, spoiler alert, but there's this one part of the book where there's remember Maggie the old lady?
Yes.
Maggie the old lady, I that was a dream that I had that I was charging at my gas station and then someone pulled a hair and I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oops, sorry." And then she runs away and then the next second like it wasn't exactly clones. But I came up with the idea of clones, but
Ah,
like random things start coming at me and they're like hair, hair. And I'm like, "Oh." And I like woke up and I'm like, "That's a good idea."
yeah. Yeah. I think that your subconscious sometimes keeps writing while you're sleeping. Have you ever written a song? Have you ever started thinking of a song, then you go to bed and you wake up and like the song is playing in your head?
No, I have not done that. I have not done that
That happens too. That's happened to me before. Where I've gone to bed with like a little piece of a chorus, and then I woke up in the morning and the chorus comes back and I start singing it, and then all the verses come and I've got the whole
yet.
thing in my head. It's really crazy.
I feel like I rarely remember my dreams. I only dream on the weekends, and those are like my weird things. I wake up and I'm like, got it, and then I go.
If you only dream on the weekends, it's probably the only time you're actually having a good night's sleep.
I know we were learning about that in psych class. I'm like, yeah, I,
You're not in REM sleep probably most of those nights during the
yeah.
week. Yeah.
Well, high school life. Would you rather be able to talk to plants or animals?
Plants.
Hmm. Same here. Yeah. I feel like they're just so like. Have you seen like I forgot what the plant's called, but it's like it's really weird and it looks like this and it's like really spiky and like I feel like I'd like to be that plant.
Huh. Why?
I don't know. I feel like because at my school, like they're by the buses, so like people like walk on them, even though I know they're supposed to be like that,
Hmm.
but they get like oh that was really loud. They like get like squashed. So I feel like I'd like to write from that perspective of being like I wish I could poke you through like your shoe, but
Do they pop up again after they've been squashed?
they don't because so many people step on them. They just get like pancaked and they look so sad and I just want to
Yeah.
write about them.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just thinking psychologically how you would analyze that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't you
First
don't want to be
time.
stepped on.
No, you don't, but I feel like the first time it would be like, ah, I'm back up again, and then eventually it'd just be like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah. But
yeah,
that wouldn't be you.
that'd be sad.
That wouldn't be you. You would be the one that keeps popping up.
Yeah.
Or you'd grow around and start new sprouts in
Or I just
places
wouldn't get bent
places that you
on.
can reach.
I would just stick up and like get spiky and then poke their shoe.
Right through their shoe. Exactly. Send them leaping through the air. That's a good idea. Yeah, if I were a tree, I probably would want to be an oak tree or a pine tree.
Yeah. Pine trees smell really good. I really like pine trees.
And they're ever
Yeah. Okay, last one, last one. A world of only color or only black and white.
only color.
Yeah. Color. I love colors. But I feel like I would cheat a little bit and I would say like pastel colors because I feel like neon colors are a little bit too much.
Yeah. Well, if it was but it was all colors, it'd be a spectrum of colors. You'd still get the pastels in there, right?
Yeah.
It's just faded versions of those neons.
Yeah. I feel like some people would pick black and white though for the film noir-esque lifestyle.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
life is full of yeah, but black and white without any grays would be
That would
deceptive.
be kind of scary.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You turn off the lights, you turn them back on again, like yeah. Okay, okay. Thank you so, so much, Miss Lipson,
Thank
for being
you.
on Life Lessons Unscripted. It's a pleasure to have you. Please go support Miss Lipson, listen to her music, read her books, poetry, get a cool, big sense of what an amazing, amazing person she is. And see you next time on Life Lessons Unscripted.